Hi everyone, I'm Reading with Jack and today I'm here to talk about BookTube. And BookTube is a very vast community. There are a lot of BookTubers out there and there are definitely a lot of points that I want to raise. So I kind of apologise if it's a long video, but I think it's the best kind of way to do it because I want to be detailed, I want to be as honest as possible. I'm going to be talking about things like channel content and the videos that we make, interactions between booktubers, booktube personalities, and then finally a little bit about the way we are treated as booktubers in terms of kind of like promotional campaigns for booktube. This is inspired by a video that I saw a few days ago on Lucy's channel and it was an amazing video, very eloquent, well spoken. I really do appreciate the fact that Lucy took the time to sit down and talk about these things that perhaps people don't always talk about. I've now been a booktuber for over 4 years and I think it's so important now that I've seen the change of booktube to really talk about things, talk about what I want from my channel, what I want from the community that I want to be part of, and the booktuber that I really want to be. Before I start talking about the points in this discussion, I really want to make it clear this is not a criticism of booktube. I absolutely love being a booktuber and I really love making videos. I would never want to criticize an individual booktuber because I don't think the change in booktube is because of any individuals. I think it's a community thing. We're all part of it and I think we all need to consider it. Because of this, it may sound like I'm generalising because I'm probably going to talk about booktubers in groups such as small booktubers and big booktubers rather than talking about individual people, but I think it's the most respectful thing to do. Just remember that even if I talk about a group of booktubers, not everyone is the same. There are always exceptions to the generalisation. So initially I'd like to discuss channel content and the videos that we are making as booktubers. And the first thing that Lucy really talked about was book hauls and book haul videos that appear in almost every single booktuber's subscription feed on a very regular basis. I think the criticism that sometimes happens with booktube is people are getting books and not reading them immediately or even talking about them again once they've mentioned them in the video. I don't think you have to read books immediately after you get them. Personally, I sometimes wait a while. I'm a mood reader. I will read when I feel like something. I may be in the mood to buy a book, but when I get around to reading it, I may not really want to read it immediately. I might put it off. However, I definitely do understand some people's concerns with this, people getting a lot of books each month. And I think sometimes this comes from publishers. Publishers do send a lot of books to booktubers. Over the past month, I've received around 3 or 4 books to my house address without any permission, actually. I've kind of just signed up to things from publishers when they've asked me to do things. And then I just get books coming through the post all the time. Even though 3 or 4 books isn't really that much, I can't keep up with it. I cannot possibly review them. And I think we need to consider, are we simply accepting too many books for review when in fact we can't really get around to reviewing them. I've actually had to ask a few companies to stop sending me books because I haven't been able to keep up with it, and I think sometimes book hauls come every single month from every booktuber because we're getting these books, and maybe the reason why we're not getting around to reading them is because, you know, it's a review copy, and I generally find with review copies I'm not as excited as a book that I would buy, which is why I've kind of stopped reviewing books. I do find that particularly when I'm sent books randomly, I either get like the last book in a series that I've not even started, or a book in a genre that I'm not really interested in. I think we need to consider in terms of book hauls, if we're getting books, that's absolutely fine. Books are good, and I love books, obviously, I'm a booktuber. But if you feel like you're getting too many books or if you're doing too many book hauls, you can always restrain yourself. It's quite similar with wrap-ups and TBR videos. They appear quite a lot towards the end of each month, beginning of the next month perhaps, and a lot of people almost feel like they have to do one of them in order to be a good booktuber, in order to be considered part of the booktube community. That is not true. You can always make the videos that you want to make yourself. Always do what you enjoy. If you enjoy doing those videos, I don't see anything wrong with that. But if, like me, you're perhaps getting a little bit bored of them, you don't have to continue doing them. Last month I didn't do a wrap-up video because I didn't feel like I wanted to, I wasn't interested in doing one, and I made another video instead. I felt like in my wrap-ups in particular, I wasn't actually being very informative. I didn't feel like I was sharing any important information about the books I was reading. I was barely talking about what the books actually were about. I wasn't really talking about my opinions in much depth either. It tended to be very general. In wrap-ups I tend to say things like the characters are well developed, the plot is fast-paced, the writing is beautiful, but I'm not really distinguishing between books very much when I'm doing that. I now really want to start doing full in-depth book reviews again. I haven't done one recently, but I'm kind of thinking about the way I want to go about my BookTube channel, and I want to be more educational and more in-depth. I want to think about the books on a more analytical level. I want to kind of think about the themes more and the ideas, the way it perhaps relates to me. Rather than just briefly talking about books, I feel like I want to go much further than that, and I feel like perhaps I won't do as many wrap-ups anymore, or I will just do book reviews, but I'm just going to do what I feel like doing, I guess. And I think that's the main message, really. Make videos you want to make them in the ways you want to make them. Don't feel like you have to follow everyone else because every single other booktuber is making a certain kind of video. You can just make whatever you want, and people will definitely appreciate that. Always be unique. Try and find new ideas for discussions, for example. People will definitely find you because people want new content. People want something different. I would always encourage to kind of go out of your way to really find something really interesting, really unique to make a video about. The next thing that I'd like to talk about is interaction between booktubers, and this is probably going to be a generalization kind of, but I kind of think it's important to discuss it anyway, so I'm sorry if you find it offensive, but as I said at the beginning, not everyone is the same. There are always exceptions. As I've been a booktuber for over 4 years, when I started there weren't really many big booktubers. To be honest, people had very similar amounts of subscribers. Like with any community, there will always be people that suddenly get a lot more subscribers than others, and I've completely understood this as BookTube has evolved over the years, but I have found that it's kind of negatively affected the interaction between booktubers, particularly between smaller booktubers and bigger booktubers. On BookTube at the moment, there definitely seems to be a social hierarchy. I don't necessarily think it's intentional, but it's something that I've observed, and I found that there's kind of a barrier between certain booktubers, and you can't really talk to those at the top. This is not always the case with all of the big booktubers. Some of them really do interact, and they do help the community out. But quite a lot of them, if you try and talk to them, maybe you send them a tweet or a comment on their video, they just really don't reply. I understand if you have hundreds and thousands of subscribers, it's not physically possible to respond to everyone and interact in an in-depth way with absolutely everyone, but I think there needs to be a little bit more effort to kind of break the barrier down. If you're a small booktuber, you can absolutely talk to a big booktuber. If you're a big booktuber, you can talk to a small booktuber. It doesn't matter what numbers of subscribers or views you have. I've definitely experienced it before. When I started BookTube, a lot of the popular booktubers today had similar amounts of subscribers to me. They did used to talk to me quite a lot. They used to comment on my videos and subscribe to me and stuff. And then suddenly it felt like I was being ditched for the more popular people. They unsubscribed, they no longer watch my videos, and that's fine if people have kind of changes in the videos they want to watch and their taste and things change. But sometimes I think booktubers are suddenly leaving everyone else behind, going to this higher level and forgetting about other people. Never forget about other booktubers. We're all part of one community together. We have to care for each other, support each other, and discuss things like this. You know, it's not a criticism of the big booktubers. It's not their fault as such that they're popular. They suddenly got a lot of subscribers, but I think we all need to interact with one another. It doesn't matter what the numbers are. So now let's move on to talking about BookTube personalities. And to be completely honest, I'm kind of scared about talking about this because although I think it's important to discuss it, I don't want to seem like I'm telling people you cannot act this way or you must act this way. I'm not dictating the way you make your videos, but I'm just going to talk about some of my personal preferences from the kind of booktubers that I like to watch. There are definitely different personality groups on BookTube. I would say, for example, there are a lot of very animated booktubers, very, very enthusiastic, almost kind of caricatures of themselves, and they clearly enjoy doing that, and there is definitely an audience for that kind of thing. But there are also more serious, low-key booktubers like myself. I think it's important to remember that every booktuber will make the videos they want to make in the ways they want to act. We kind of need to appreciate different kinds of people, and I think sometimes it could just be me. I feel like there's an expectation to be more lively in my videos. I feel like I have to start joking around in order to impress people, and I don't think that's exactly something that I want to do, because I feel like I want to be very natural. I think it's so important to remember that if you don't really fit the mold or almost expectation of being incredibly enthusiastic and jumpy, it really doesn't matter. There is an audience for every kind of person. You have to be comfortable with who you are, and please don't act as someone else, because I don't think that's what BookTube is about. I would much rather have a very natural conversation with someone, as if I'm talking to the camera now, as if it's a person, you know. I'm not going to start jumping around in front of people because I don't think it's what people do in real life personally. Rather than spending time on deciding how to make jokes, how to make my videos more entertaining and planning things out like that before I film, I would much rather spend time thinking about what I'm going to talk about, how I'm going to inform people about the books, particularly in a book review, for example. For me, that's not a piece of entertainment. If I want entertainment, I honestly will go to a comedy channel on YouTube outside of BookTube. That's what I'm kind of focusing on doing, being who I want to be, being the serious person maybe I am, and I am going to think about the reviews more and the information that I'm sharing, the content of the actual video, which isn't to do with joking or potentially kind of going crazy in a video. The final thing I'd like to talk about is something that I think is kind of out of booktubers' control. You know, as booktubers, we can't really control what other people are doing, and this is in terms of promotion. As booktubers become more recognised, and there are very popular booktubers now, sometimes I see things like fan accounts on Twitter, Instagram. I have seen articles about BookTube as well, and I do kind of have a problem with this, and it's not because I don't think people should be recognised for their work. Every booktuber works hard, and I think it's fantastic that BookTube has quite an importance in the book buying and book selling process right now, with publishers in particular. I think it's good to appreciate booktubers. However, I don't think the way people are promoted is exactly what is a good representation of BookTube. By this, I mean if I see articles about BookTube and, you know, I've seen things like, you know, this is the next big thing on the internet, people talking about books, and then there may be 5 booktubers who are basically identical. They will talk about the same kind of books, they will act in the same kind of ways, and there isn't really much diversity there. I feel like if BookTube is being promoted, we need to show that BookTube is a diverse place, and it's increasingly becoming diverse all of the time. People are exploring different kinds of books. I think sometimes if people stumble across these articles or fan accounts, they may think that BookTube is not for them because they don't see someone they relate to as such. You know, for example, there are definitely a lot of booktubers that talk about classics, but in these articles that I've seen, there hasn't been any discussion about that. And maybe a classic reader will think that BookTube is not for them, even though they could be potentially a fantastic booktuber if they joined. I don't know if this is making sense, but through these articles I think we need to show that there is a place on BookTube for every kind of reader. There is not a formula for success. You don't have to act a certain way or read a certain amount of books or a certain kind of books. I would love it if there was a mix of big and smaller booktubers featured in articles and fan accounts like this, because I think particularly for smaller booktubers it helps them to start out, it gives them confidence, it shows them that they have a voice, and we all have voices on BookTube. We are all people with valued opinions, and I think we need to just kind of present BookTube as quite a varied place, a place where people read different kinds of books and don't just act in the same kind of way. So everyone, that was my very rambly discussion about BookTube. I hope it was somewhat interesting. I'm not really sure if it's gone the way I wanted it to, and I probably won't be able to tell until after I've edited. I did try and plan some things out, but there is so much to say that I may have missed something. Or if you want me to clarify anything, you can absolutely ask me down below in the comments. Please tell me as well what you think about all the current BookTube stuff, what's going on BookTube and the evolution of BookTube, I guess you could call it. Thank you so much for watching and listening to my opinions. See you all again in my next video.